Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Oldham County Fiscal Court. I'm David Vogel, Judge Executive. Happy to have all of you here today for our meeting on this particular rainy day, November 16th, 2024. If you brought a cell phone with you, we'd ask you to turn it to off or vibrate. And now, if you're able, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Holly, please call the roll.
Magistrate Likens. Magistrate Tice.
Here.
Magistrate Woosley.
Here.
Magistrate Jeffries.
Here.
Magistrate Hounds.
Here.
Magistrate Hawkins.
Here.
Magistrate Dye.
Present.
Magistrate Logsdon.
Here.
And Judge Vogel.
Here. Having 8 of the 9 members of the fiscal court present, this meeting is now in session. Is there a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any changes or additions? All right. Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. A moment ago, you heard Holly ask if Magistrate Likens was here today. He's not. He may be watching at home. I know he's recovering from medical work, and we miss you, Brent, if you're watching, and look forward to your return at our next meeting. All right, we'll go on to the first item on today's agenda, and that's our public comment. Is there anybody here who would like to address an issue that's not part of the public hearing for today? Pardon? Didn't approve the minutes. Okay, hang on just a second. Okay. My fault. Was there a motion to approve the minutes from our meeting?
So
on
moved.
November 6th?
Second.
All right, any corrections on that? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right. Come, now you're okay. Got ahead of myself there.
Good afternoon. My name is Robin Vessels. I live at 1320 Bluegrass Parkway, LaGrange, Kentucky. And I wanted to say thank you for the wonderful web page redesign. It is really nice. I would like to suggest that maybe if we could have at least 2 years of agendas and minutes that could be available for easy accessibility for those who may need to reference those agendas or minutes would be really nice. Getting information uploaded into the website may be still in its infancy, but it would be nice to have at least 2 years' worth. I would like to publicly acknowledge a few of your employees. Jim Silliman, the county engineer, Ryan Fisher, the planning director, Benjamin Kimber, superintendent of the road department. I have had the need to contact these employees regarding various questions and issues, and all of them have been very helpful. Even though not an employee, I wish to acknowledge the chairman of the Planning Commission, Greg Keene. I had spoken before the Planning Commission and found him to be very respectful. And I wish to acknowledge a couple of the sheriff's deputies, Deputy Meese and Deputy Akisto, for their professionalism. My father and I were booted from a meeting in which they were providing security, and they showed extreme professionalism and kindness while we walked to the exit. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to address the fiscal court? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment and go on to the next item on the agenda today, and that's the Kentucky Ambulance Block Grant application for Oldham County EMS. Is Debbie here? Debbie Berry? All right.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Debbie Berry, EMS Director. It's that time of year again for us to apply for our ambulance block grant that we do every year for $10,000. We'll be submitting that as soon as we get the judge's signature on this form. I think this year we're going to add some more lifting devices for help to aid patients that are unable to get off the floor. It really helps the patients, but these lifting devices, and we're probably going to replace some of the aging equipment. We're not sure exactly what yet, but some of our aging equipment that we've got on the ambulances. So that's kind of what we're looking at this year.
All right.
I make the motion, Judge, that you sign the grant for EMS.
Second.
Any discussion on this? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Do you need the form, sir, or do you have, do you have it, Holly?
I've got
Okay.
one here.
Thank
I
you
would
very
like to ask you to maybe come back, maybe not in December, but come back in January and give us a update on the status of EMS. It may have been a while since you've been here. I can't remember right off the top of my head right now.
Usually the only thing I've done is come with the grant, but I'll be happy to come.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
we need to know about, bring us up to date on the number of vehicles on the road, number of runs, private patient, EMS, Medicare, Medicaid, where the ambulances are going and so forth. We just periodically need to have our memory refreshed
Absolutely.
on what's happening. And
If
be
I may,
able-
if I could do that maybe in January, Miss Holly. December's busy with our,
Right.
we're getting ready to submit for our accreditation, reaccreditation again. Once again, we're only one of two services in the whole state that have this accreditation, and then one of less than 200 in the nation. So we're going to be submitting for that in December, and I'll be happy to get you up to
Right,
date on that
January
too.
will be our relationship with Baptist Healthcare will be 12 and a half years
Wow.
old, and since the beginning of our service, we have had excellent results, and we've had no tax increases for EMS in the last 12 and a half years.
Yes,
So
thank you.
we're happy with how the service is running, but I think magistrates
you.
may have questions, just they'd like
Absolutely.
to
I'll
be
be
able
happy to
to
come.
respond to our constituents.
Yes, sir. Thank
right.
you all very
Thank you.
much.
All right.
Judge, I have a question for her. On this report, would you be able to list how many runs are made out of the county for other counties for
I
assistance, like
certainly
Henry
can.
County? or
Oh,
Trumbull
yes,
County?
I can get any data that, about that, so you want number of runs outside of the county?
Yeah, just made
Mutual aid
sure.
runs for our contiguous counties?
Please, yes, thank you.
Sure. Anything else in particular?
Just one statement too. Dr. Clark, still your chairman?
Yes, sir.
Bring him back with you when you all come or whatever, so we can question him or whatever. He's a great fellow. He used to be my dentist, so yeah.
Yes,
like Dr.
okay.
Clark really well.
Seriously, do you want him to come?
If he's available, sure.
Okay, sure, I'll ask him.
Right, and later today, we'll be adding Dr. Madonna Ringswold to the EMS board.
Okay,
So,
thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Y'all have a wonderful day. I'll see you in January.
Thank you. All right, the Stormwater Management District Board fiscal year 25 budget presentation. Jim
Yes, sir.
and Tad Douglas.
Yes, it is. Hit the down key. Or...
Good afternoon, Judge Vogel and magistrates. Pleased to be here today to present the 2025 budget for the Stormwater Management District Board. On the screen before you, you will see that our budget has increased slightly from 2024 by about $400,000. And that is mostly explained by an increase in the carryover revenue. And that mostly comes from monies that were have not yet been spent because of projects that are still in the design phase, and we expect to be spending a good part of that next year. Under the operating expenditures, you can see we have a slight increase in most of the administrative costs. Contractual services to Oldham County Fiscal Court is unchanged, but to the city of LaGrange, that number is now $120,000 due to the new contract. So our total operating expense is $1.463 million, an increase of about $500,000 over last year. And net income is $1.676 million, actually a slight decrease from last year. What you see on this slide are the areas of responsibility that the Stormwater Board has over the stormwater in Oldham County to maintain the safety and health and well-being of the Oldham County residents. And all of this is wrapped up in the MS4 program monitoring plan that you see here. The MCM stands for minimum control measures for each of those areas. although you may already know that. From this point on, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Silliman because you may have some questions for him that he can answer better than I can.
Thank you. What we show here is typically a summary of our annual service report statistics. Reports, these are the tasks that fall under those MCMs typically. We've summarized them. We include those in our monthly service reports that are provided. And if you have any questions about this, feel free to ask. You know, a lot of times the numbers are not dictated by us. They're dictated by construction activity or the calls we get from the public. So if we have, say, individual lot SWEC inspections up, it might be because there's just more home building going on. Illicit discharge reports up, we probably just got more reports, and those have been addressed, again, to address those minimum control measures within the MS4 permit. If you like, I can just hold on for questions at the end.
Okay, yeah,
Okay.
keep going.
As part of the program, the stormwater fee and the program through the MS4 permit was established to monitor the quality of water within the county under that permit. But as there is also additional funds available outside of the administration portion, we're able to complete projects. The small to mid-sized projects we complete in-house. As noted here, the stormwater crew within the road department's completed 43 projects. I listed 4 more notable. However, I really just wanted to focus on this one on Pin Oak Drive as an example because it was somewhat unique and it focuses or highlights the good neighbor aspect of our community. And what I mean is there was an issue at this property on Pin Oak where water was collecting and not draining in this front yard. And there were, as with any project, several ways to address this. We could cut across the front yard, go into the back, and there's a stream here. We thought about, could we traverse this property, and we approached this property owner. Unfortunately, even though he was willing to let us work on his property, there was a septic field in the way. The first option was really just a long route and was more invasive. We ended up communicating with this property owner, and even though they really didn't, they wouldn't benefit from this project at all, it was the property across the street that would benefit. They allowed us or offered us a grant, not a grant, I'm sorry, an easement across their property to be able to lay a storm sewer pipe. So again, just the good neighbor aspect and being able to work with these 3 neighbors to get something accomplished so the home at 3105 no longer has this standing water in the front yard. We also offer a 50-50 flood grant. We call it's a cost share grant through the county, where if a resident has a stormwater issue, surface water stormwater issue that is not within an easement or the right of way and therefore is their responsibility, they can apply for this grant and receive half of the project reimbursed up to $7,000. In fiscal year 24, we only had 1 participating resident, and that did total the entire, they got the entire $7,000 reimbursed. In fiscal year 25, we've had 2 so far, equaling $9,700, and we have a third that's currently under review for another $7,000. So we've got a little bit more reception this fiscal year. Moving on to some of our larger projects, our capital improvement projects that are above the scope that our road department would be asked to address, and we typically contract out. A few years ago, we completed a Perrin Drive drainage improvement project. City of Crestwood was provided funding reimbursement through the Stormwater Board for drainage improvements in the rear of the Park Lake subdivision. And we recently completed the phase 2 of our Buckner Soccer Fields project. The first phase was completed by the road department a few years ago. It was phased for a cost standpoint. But the basin itself was completed, and that made up most of the capital improvement dollars spent in the last fiscal year. Just some, so you see what we did. This was the ditching that was provided by our road department a couple years ago, and it was successfully intended to keep the drainage off of Grand Villa subdivision to the left. At the time, we hadn't had the detention basin constructed yet, so it flowed into this field, and that wasn't a problem. But since then, we have been able to construct this large stormwater detention basin to regulate the outfall into Grand Villa. This is just looking further down. Actually, this is a little path where the cross-country runners go through this area. Perrin Drive, it was a damaged, dilapidated concrete ditch. Also, if you look, that was it after the improvement. Moving upstream, this was the side yard and the easement. You can see a significant amount of erosion. That was improved with this concrete ditch, and these blocks serve to slow down the stormwater flow, to keep that flow down. So over the past, this is just a summary of over the past 6 or 7 years, capital improvements that this money's been spent on. So we really just want to show the, I think it's a success rate, whether it's the Holly Gibson Road improvements that were done to get stormwater into a system so it wasn't freezing on the road in the winter, which was a relatively low-cost project that was done in-house, or the Buckner Soccer Fields detention basin that was a little bit more expensive, but another great project. Right now, we have under design 2 projects. One, it's the Rollington Road project it involves road widening and also a culvert replacement, or a small bridge, large culvert, however you want to look at it. That's actually being done in cooperation. It's Fiscal Court and Stormwater Board funded. We have final design plans and are coordinating with the water company on their relocations that are going to have to be performed. We hope to be out to bids for that construction in January or February of next year. The other is a significant project, the Clovercroft, Confederate Estates, and Ashbrook project. Those are 3 subdivisions that have had stormwater runoff issues and ponding issues for quite a while. We are currently in the preliminary design phase. We're actually towards the end of the preliminary design phase and entering a more final design phase. We have a public meeting with a group of homeowners later this week to look at a couple of the alternatives that we favor. This is the project that, if you recall, a few months ago was actually awarded about $275,000 in cleaner water grant money from KIPTA and the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority. So this is a pretty impressive view of one of the storm events in Confederate Estates, and this is what we're trying to address. This kind of highlights the colors. The blocks are different stormwater concerns we've received from the neighbors. We wanted to map where the actual issues were. What we've basically resolved, or the projects we're favoring now, are actually in the Clovercroft subdivision. North, we're looking at 2 projects, and we'll discuss these with the homeowners. But ideally, they'll also, although they're in Clovercroft, they'll address the stormwater that currently flows down to the 2 other subdivisions and redirect it to the creek before it gets there. These are just some exhibits that we'll be able to provide at that meeting. That's our, I'll call our flagship project right now that we're working on, along with these other measures. And if you have any questions, myself and Mr. Douglas are here to answer.
All right, Measure Towns.
I see where you said that the LaGrange money went up from 100 to 120. Is that because of increase in fees that they paid, or they asked for more money, or what?
It goes along with the fee increase that was approved recently.
Okay.
Basically a ratio of those.
Can we get a list? There's been a list in the past that I've seen that's got all the stormwater projects on it.
Yes.
Can we get a copy of that list to see what those projects are?
Oh, yes. So we actually provided a couple months ago an updated. I thought we did. I'll check our records and see.
I apologize. If you did,
and we may have
misplaced
provided it to the Stormwater Board, and I didn't get to the magistrates, but we can provide that to you. Yes.
Okay. I will say, I was over there looking at the last culvert, not the culvert, the ditch that you did. Happened to be in the neighborhood showing a house, and there I saw the concrete ditch line. That is pretty impressive. I mean, it looks nice. Hopefully it can stay that way. And I think, and you and I've had this conversation, and I'll make this comment. We've got to figure out a way to get out to the public to tell them that those concrete ditches are not leaf burning receptacles. Because depending on where you live, that seems to be the most convenient place to rake the leaves, and we all know that that doesn't help the concrete.
Yeah. Well, and if you were thinking about if that was Goshen Hills, which was one of our large capital improvement projects, Ben Kimbler and our stormwater crew have been helping out with that because as we've completed that project, we've had some issues with maintenance. The leaves are not getting burned. They're flowing down and getting captured on a couple of trash racks or safety grates that were placed on these. And so we've gone through a couple iterations of modifications to those grates to try and get them to work so they keep people or kids out, but let the leaves go through appropriately. So,
And one of the local TV stations last week or 2 weeks ago, whenever we had that first rain event that we hadn't had one in 4 weeks,
Right.
they made it a point to ask people to go out to find those drainage grates and just, push the leaves off of them. Because
them up.
obviously they work much better when they're not covered up with leaves.
correct.
Magistrate Jeffries.
Just a quick couple things. I know there was an issue with the stormwater fee not being included on everybody's property taxes. So I know they've sent out another tax bill. I assume that those funds are coming in. And do we have any idea how many dollars that was not included on the original tax bill?
Stan Clark, CFO, told me that. I don't recall the number. I think it was about 20% of the bills.
Okay.
That first day, I think we knew when everyone was opening up their mail because Stan and myself and the sheriff's
About
office.
5,600 bills.
Okay.
And of course, some of them may have been more than $50, but
Right.
56 times $50 is about $28,000, I think.
I think a lot of them are in my district or whatever, so I got a lot of phone calls too about, what's this bill? Or, did something go up or, that kind of thing. So I think everybody, once you explain to them, they understood, what happened. And it's just one of those things that, paperwork or whatever. But hopefully, that's been corrected and it'll go out, with everybody's regular tax bill, next year.
Yes, as far as I'm aware, everyone
Right.
it's been explained to and they understand the issue and they've been coming in for payment.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Did have a question on your first slide that Tad showed. It looked to me like your revenue from fees only went up a couple $1,000s. Is that all we're going to? The only increase we're going to see is $2,000 over 1 year. I mean, that's I guess that we've had more commercial and residential property come online. I thought it would generate more than that.
I would have to check with Stan to get a breakdown of that. But yes, it only shows a couple thousand, actually $1,100, so not a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
But
don't know where they
if
got
you
it,
like,
but
we
it
can
is a projection. It's not
correct.
it's not a finite number or,
Correct.
okay.
And there may be properties that have been completed since June 30th that will receive a tax bill for next year that wouldn't be included in that amount.
Okay, yeah, right. Well, nothing goes off the rolls generally, I wouldn't think, but it should just be, the snowball should keep getting a little bigger each year, yeah,
Yes.
right. All right, well, thank you, guys. If there's no other questions, appreciate it, thank you. Next item on the agenda here
That's
is
what I was
under
just gonna
county
say.
administration, our bills to be paid.
Make a motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Any discussion on these? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now we're up to the second reading of a proposed ordinance, KOC 24-920-074, related to zoning for medical cannabis facilities. Ryan Fisher, and this will be a public meeting so that if there are those who are here and to speak in favor of the second reading of the ordinance, they'll be able to do so. If you're here to speak in opposition to the zoning, you'll be able to do that as well. Ryan, go ahead.
All right, Judge Vogel, Magistrates, County Attorney Baxter, thank you for having me. So this is our long-anticipated ordinance for medical cannabis facilities, which will be in our comprehensive zoning ordinance as Section 250-065. So I'll start with a little bit of background, and most of you all know this already, but state legislature in March of 2023 passed medical cannabis into law. The governor signed that into law at the end of March in 2023, and the provisions of the bill go into effect on January 1st of 2025. So any county or city that wants to enact any regulations concerning medical cannabis have until that date in order to get these completed. I'll put this slide on here early because I want everybody to know that this is just related to medical cannabis. Any sort of recreational use outside of this program still remains legal within the state of Kentucky. And would require either another bill come through the state legislature, as well as allow us the opportunity to then have other regulations in place to prevent the sale of recreational if the Commonwealth ever gets to that point. So I just want to put that on there earlier to kind of quench that. So all local governments, counties and cities are automatically opted into the medical cannabis program unless they do one of three things. And so number 5 there shows counties and cities can enact ordinances to establish restrictions and fees on cannabis business operations, which was what we're here to do today. They can choose to prohibit all cannabis business operations, which a couple of local cities in our county have done, or they can enact a resolution to put the question of allowing cannabis within their jurisdictions on the ballot. So local governments, in regards to the restrictions, can establish parameters on time, place, and manner. Those regulations can't be less restrictive than the state law, and they shouldn't impose an undue burden or make cannabis business operations unreasonable. And as I stated earlier, those local governments must choose to opt out or enact those regulations prior to January 1st of 2025. Not that this is really an issue here, but this next slide is if the county were to choose to prohibit medical cannabis operations, local cities can still choose to do that. And so you'll see a slide here in a second where if we look at Crestwood, Pewee Valley, and LaGrange, you'll kind of see that. So they can approve those operations to occur within the city, and the city of LaGrange has done that. So this slide here just shows the county at large. So down at the bottom, Pewee Valley City Council as well as the Crestwood City Council both enacted ordinances to prohibit the sale of medical cannabis operations within the city of Pewee Valley and the city of Crestwood. LaGrange City Council in October of this year did vote to approve medical cannabis operations within their city. That is with a conditional use permit, which we'll get to later on in our regulation. It's going to be essentially the same. So all of those potential medical cannabis facilities within the city will go before their LaGrange Board of Adjustments. And then that brings us to us. We had our first reading on the 5th, and that brings us to today on the 19th. A little bit of fiscal court action you've already been a part of. Back in June, Magistrate Hawkins made a motion to prohibit all medical cannabis facilities within the county, and that motion did fail before you all on a vote of 5-4. And then in August, Magistrate Hawkins also made a motion to place that question of medical cannabis on the November ballot, and that motion also failed on a vote of 5-4. So with that being said, in November, several Kentucky counties and cities took that measure to ballot. And just a little bit, just to kind of show you around the state, 21 Kentucky counties took the option to opt out of medical cannabis altogether. 39 of those counties made the decision to authorize medical cannabis without any restrictions whatsoever. And 53 Kentucky counties let the voters decide here back in early November. That measure passed in all 53 Kentucky counties. And that closest margin of victory was 54% to 46% in Hickman and Crittenden counties. As well, that measure passed in all 53 Kentucky cities that had that measure on the ballot as well. So this is a map off the Kentucky Office of Medical Cannabis that they have provided, just showing a breakdown of the state. You can see the counties that are outlined in red. Those are counties that have completely opted out of medical cannabis. The counties in purple, which you can see us up here, those are counties that some have opted in and some have opted out. So you've got some cities in there. So for us, Crestwood and Pewee Valley have opted out. So that's why we're that purple shade. The blue are all the counties that have opted in to the medical cannabis program. So just kind of gives you an idea of what the state as a whole looks like. Simultaneously to all this stuff happening, we had already started our process going before the study review committee to look at regulations on where these businesses might be able to locate, what zoning areas and the process involved. And so we met with study review committee for 3 months, had fairly decent community input on those 3 meetings as well as several magistrates that were in attendance. So we met with that and started kind of forming our regulations. And then in September, we took that to the Oldham County Planning Commission, and that passed them with a recommendation of approval to you all, and that motion was approved on a vote of 12-1. So now a little bit about the operations itself at the state. So we're part of a 7-county region, and you can see it up here in the light blue or dark blue, depending on what screen you're looking at. So a 7-county region that encompasses us, Jefferson County, Bullitt, Spencer, Shelby, Henry, and Trimble. So we're known as the Kentuckiana region, 7 counties. And so we'll talk about those licenses here in a second and how they pertain to that region. So the initial license availability, cultivators, in which I did include information sheets in your all staff handouts, just kind of going over each type of dispensary or each type of license and what those mean. So cultivators, initially there were 16 licenses up for grabs. Processors, there were 10, and I have all of those highlighted because that lottery has actually already taken place, and we'll go over that here again in a second. And then 48 dispensary licenses to go around. So in our region, there are 6 licenses to be given, but 2 of those have to be given to facilities within Jefferson County. So really between the other 6 counties in our region, there's 4 up for grabs. And then there's no limit on the safety compliance facilities. So those business license types, and like I said, I gave you all a pretty extensive handout looking at each of those types of licenses. And one thing I'd like you to note on those, if you haven't looked at it, is look at the license fee numbers on the amount of money that the license is, and then the annual renewal. So you'll see a slide here in a second of how much the state has made just off of applications alone, so you can start to get an idea of how much money this is going to bring into the state. So those business license types, a cultivator, processor, safety compliance facility, and dispensary. And so as I was going over this, I kind of got a farming analogy, so Magistrate Jeffers can maybe help me through this if I mess up, but so cultivator essentially is the one that's going to plant, raise, and harvest the product. So same as any farmer that's going to produce any sort of product off of their farm. They're going to raise the cows, and when they're ready to get whatever they do with cows, when they take them to make us steaks, they'll send them to that processor in order to do that job. So they're going to process and package that raw plant material into usable product formats. The safety compliance facilities are essentially the ones that just make sure that product is at the right level that it needs to be at, and make sure those products are going to be in the proper testing. And then the dispensaries are going to be the ones that are purchasing and then selling that finished product to card holders. And with this being medical cannabis, everybody that would go into these facilities is going to be a card holder that's going to have a specific medical condition that a doctor is going to write a prescription for to be able to go in and do this. So they're just essentially not going to be open to the general public to walk in and do whatever. You'd have to have a medical card according to this program. So that initial cannabis license period, that opened July 1 and ended at the end of August. And in that time, the state received almost 5,000 applications for medical cannabis operations. And you can see the breakdown there between them, almost a little over 4,000 dispensary applications alone. So with that, the state collected $27 million in non-refundable licensing fees. Half of those applications were received the last 4 days of that application period. Once again, that's non-refundable application fees. So in early October, the state issued their first medical cannabis license, and that was to a KCA Labs in Nicholasville. So that's a safety compliance facility. Only 5 testing facilities even submitted applications. And once again, there's no limit on these, but they did issue that first one in early October. In late October, the state held its first licensing They awarded those 16 cultivator licenses and 10 processor licenses. So the lottery is actually being conducted by the Kentucky Lottery, available to watch on their YouTube channel. So they did award those. Nobody in Oldham County got any of those. There was a couple that were issued to companies in Jefferson as well as Bullitt County out of our region. So those winners, and I'm guessing they're going to do the same for the dispensary licenses, but they had to pay that fee, their licensing fee, within 15 days. And if they didn't, they forfeited that license. And then, so the lottery for dispensary licenses, which is the only one left, those will start to occur on November 25th, but the lottery for our region will actually be on December 16th. So both the Kentuckiana region, which encompasses Louisville, and then the Bluegrass region, which encompasses the Lexington area, both of those, since they get a different amount of licenses, they have their own separate day. So December 16th, and you can see there the applications for dispensaries in our region alone is 628. So that is that drawing. And so now a little bit of the nuts and bolts of the actual regulation. And it's really just to ensure that those adverse effects created by any sort of medical cannabis facility is minimized and controlled so as not to cause or contribute to any crime, increasing blight, or downgrading any sort of adjacent property or surrounding neighborhoods. We didn't really go in depth on our regulation with definitions, since those sometimes are subject to change. So we did write in there that all definitions are defined by the KRS statute, and any revisions and amendments that come along with that. But there is a pretty extensive set of definitions that we didn't really go in depth on within our regulation. But the definitions do apply to any opening or commencement of a new medical cannabis business, the conversion of any existing business in the county to a cannabis facility, and the addition or expansion to a medical cannabis facility, or the relocation of one. So really we started to kind of narrow down what zoning districts we would see these in. And so where we've come to is agricultural 2 business district, so our ag business district, which actually there are no ag 2 properties within the county. So all of those, if somebody does choose to try to bring a cultivator license to one of those areas, would require a zoning change, which would bring it before the legislative body. So ag 2, all of our commercial business districts, and then all of our industrial districts as well, I-1, I-2, and IPD. Those are permitted only after the approval of a conditional use permit from the Oldham County Board of Adjustments. So exactly like LaGrange has theirs, every single one of their permits for medical cannabis would have to go through the conditional use permit process before the Board of Adjustments, which then has to notify adjoining property owners, has to have a public hearing, has to be noticed, all of those things. So certain types of business licenses we allowed in certain types of areas. So you can see there the cultivator is allowed in AG2 with a zoning change. Like I said, there's no AG2 property. And then our industrial zoning areas. And then our processors allowed in those industrial zoning areas. Our safety compliance facilities, if they choose to come here, can be in any of the areas, commercial or industrial. And then our dispensary operations would only be allowed in commercial zoning districts. Once again, after the approval of a conditional use permit from the Board of Adjustments. As far as location restrictions, so the state law does prohibit any medical cannabis facility from being within 1,000 feet of an existing school or daycare. So it is the applicant's responsibility to ensure that they are not within that area. And if you've been to the state's medical cannabis website, they actually have a really useful tool where you can type in an address and it will tell you whether or not you're within those parameters of a school or daycare. So it's a pretty neat system. And then we also wanted to add in a few other location restrictions. And so there's 5 of these here, and that would be 1,000 feet from an existing medical cannabis facility or establishment, 1,000 feet from a pre-existing religious institution, 1,000 feet from a pre-existing educational institution, property and daycare, childcare facility, so that's part of the state law. And then 1,000 feet from a pre-existing library property, as well as 1,000 feet of a pre-existing park property. So you may be asking yourself, with all of those, where can this go in Oldham County? So at our planning commission hearing, I let Matt Toller, our GIS guy, actually come out of the office and come up and talk. But for this one, I just said, hey, will you send me a few slides and I can add in. So where can it go? So this is a map of Oldham County. And you can see there, pretty small right now, but in those pinkish red shaded portions are any of the areas outside of Crestwood, Pewee Valley, and LaGrange that aren't within 1,000 feet of any of those parameters we just talked about. So somehow on GIS, he does his computer magic and types in, give me all the properties that aren't within 1,000 feet of a school, aren't within 1,000 feet of a park, aren't within 1,000 feet of all this stuff, and take them outside of LaGrange, Crestwood, and Pewee Valley. And so I'll break down a few of these locations. But really what you're looking at here is big section here on Commerce Parkway going up towards Quality Place along 71. And most likely what we thought is if they're going to come here, that's probably where they're probably going to look at locating. Alongside the interstate, easily accessible. There are a couple places here. You're looking at Hounds Lane has a little section of industrial out there that would be allowed. You've got out on 42, out near the county line, there's a little swath of commercial. So I just wanted him to highlight a couple areas, and that's one here is the Commerce Parkway area. So this green are all the parcels that could potentially have a medical cannabis facility in them. Now, this doesn't take into account the zoning and what type of facility, just that that's outside of all of the parameters that we have. 1,000 feet of a school daycare, 1,000 feet of park, 1,000 feet of library, and all that. So this is the Commerce Parkway corridor along 71. And you can see it goes up here towards Quality Place and all this area off of 71. And then the other area is just right there at the county line in Prospect, kind of near where the Thorntons is located, and the strip mall, that being commercially zoned property as well. That falls out of those areas as well. And then, like I said, there's just a couple different outliers that are out there. There's some out in Ballardsville where there's a little commercial section, but those aren't areas that we probably have thought that anybody's going to want to look at putting a medical cannabis facility, but you never know. So that's just kind of an idea of where we're looking at these potentially going outside of the city of LaGrange. And then lastly, last couple slides, the development plan as well. So along with the conditional use permit, they would be required to come in with a development plan, and that would show access, parking requirements. And it's my understanding that the medical cannabis regulations actually, you have to have certain parking spaces available because there's only really one person in the facilities at a time. So it's very, cut and dry on what kind of parking you have to have. In addition, we've got our regulations on signage, and you can see there on number 6 on page 2 of the regulation, it talks about it's really got to be non-descriptive signage. Nothing that really can be descriptive to cannabis, marijuana, weed, pot, or any other descriptive language that would insinuate any sort of cannabis. So very minimal signage. So all of those regulations have to come in as well. Landscaping regulations that would have to comply with our landscaping standards, where the dumpster is going to be located, and really the justification of the location as well. And all of that is mainly required in our conditional use permit process already. So they would have to bring that in. And then also there are hours of operation requirements that pretty much 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. are those hours. So the way it's worded is a little different there, but you can't do any sales between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m. All right. I think that's all for me. If you all have got any questions, I'll entertain those now.
All right, we'll wait a little further here. Let me ask, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak in favor of this ordinance? Is there anybody here who would like to speak in opposition to it? All right, we'll allow you, pretty much unlimited amount of time. I mean, opposition can speak for up to 50 minutes if you can, Robin, if you can get that together, but we pray you don't.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to do that. Okay. My name is Robin Vessels, and I live at 1320 Bluegrass Parkway, LaGrange, Kentucky, and I am speaking today regarding this ordinance as there is an undefined term that is concerning to me. And that undefined term is, quote, education institutional property. This is a term that is not defined in the zoning ordinance. I had spoken before the Planning Commission regarding my concern, and the Planning Commission chairman was very respectful of what I had to say and asked if the members of the commission wanted to discuss my concern. Let me demonstrate how that went.
Pardon me?
That's the demonstration.
They said nothing.
Oh, they said nothing, okay.
No one said a word, not a peep. And guess how many commissioners accessed their copy of the zoning ordinance to ascertain if what I had said was correct? 0. Not a one of them. Now, I have been told that sometimes I talk above most people, that they do not understand what I am saying. And as they don't understand me, they ignore me. If we have Planning Commission members that think I am talking above them when I say the term is not defined in the zoning ordinance, then we have commissioners who should be tendering their letters of resignation. While I understand that most people are trying to do their best, sometimes their best just may not be good enough. I am well aware that the state law has minimum restrictions as to whether medical cannabis facilities can be located, but having a term that is not defined in your zoning ordinance creates a loophole. I did what I was supposed to do. I spoke before the Planning Commission, and I was ignored. So now I make my presentation to you. At this juncture, I would submit that the fiscal court may want to omit the undefined term, education institutional property, before the ordinance is passed, or perhaps send it back to the Planning Commission. But now we are in a time crunch. The law becomes effective on January the 1st. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else here who would like to speak in opposition to the ordinance? Okay, saying no, and we'll close the public comment, and we'll go to the magistrates now to get this on the table for discussion. Is there a motion that we
Judge.
approve the ordinance?
Judge, I'd like to make a motion that we approve KOC 24-920-074 zoning text amendment, Oldham County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance creating medical cannabis regulations, section 250-065.
Moved and seconded. All right, now discussion among magistrates. Magistrate Logston.
I just have a clarification. So you're going to have to be 1,000 feet from any kind of school or any kind of facility. So what happens if a daycare moves in once that facility is there? What does that? You can't put a daycare there? Is that? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out how this is going to work.
So it states pre-existing. So if a daycare facility were to move, it's my understanding, and I don't know if the county attorney wants to chime in on this, as I'm not practicing law. Do you want to chime in before I answer?
I'll be glad to.
Okay.
So the answer, magistrate, is that when the application is made, they have to comply with the ordinance. So they have to be, there cannot be one of those facilities within 1,000 feet of where the facility is going to be located. That restricts the location of the facility. It does not restrict any subsequent. So, for example, if a daycare wanted to, for whatever reason, build next door and they met the zoning qualifications, they're not prohibited from doing that, but it would not affect the pre-existing cannabis facility at that point.
Mm-hmm.
All right, does anybody else have anything? Magistrate Hawkins.
As one who's kind of been in this from the beginning, there has been one line that was, I had asked, spoke with the judge and spoke with Mr. Baxter if we could add this, and it's up to the discretion of the court, of course, but it's, as far as abutting residential, it wasn't addressed in the original ordinance that was authored. And it's this line that says as follows: Cannabis operations shall not be permitted on any commercial property contiguous with or across the street from any residential property or mixed-use property. And that was something that LaGrange had added in there, so I thought it was a nice line. If the court would be okay with adding that line into this ordinance with the motion.
All right, are you making a motion in that regard? You are.
Just to add
All
that
right.
in if,
All right, is there a second to that?
yeah,
Pardon?
okay.
We have it moved and seconded that an additional restriction be added to subsection 1 here on page 2 of 3, that the medical cannabis facility not be allowed to locate next to a residential or
Property.
mixed unit
Or across the street from,
or across the street.
yeah.
Okay, property.
It
I-
seems obvious, but I just thought that that should be in there specifically. So when somebody does come for a conditional use, then the Board of Adjustments has those guardrails in place as to what the expectation
Oh,
is.
okay. Well, let's take, for example, I believe that, okay, you showed a diagram of North Oldham Shopping Center, I would say, where Thornton's is and so forth. Okay, I believe some people live across the street from there. And then, and that where Henry's Ark is, or whatever, and,
That's,
No, it's
that's
not.
on the other side
on
of
the other
42,
side.
Judge, and
Can you put the whole map back up, Ryan? I mean, we're talking about one area, maybe
Maybe.
two.
Technically, though, you're saying across the street, are you considering 71? Because there's residential on the south side of 71.
No, because across the street from that would be the other side of Commerce. Across the
I
street.
mean, wouldn't your situation be covered by, everybody has to go to the Board of Adjustments for this to begin with, so neighbors could come and object at that point.
Yeah, I think that legally, the notification of those kind of things goes to what? Just those adjoining, I can't remember, it's some feet.
Yeah, so it goes to the adjoining property, or so anybody's property that touches, and we usually do across the street on that as well. So they would have to legally be notified for the Board of Adjustments hearing.
I mean, in that shopping center where the IGA is, for example, there's apartments and houses right behind it. So, I mean, across the street, does across the street just go forward, or does it go forward and backward?
Ryan, how does across the street work?
So, yeah, I mean, we usually do across the street. The difficulty is when property lines across the street intersect, and then sometimes you'll have a property line that is literally like 5 feet across the street it touches. You know, are we going to notify them? I mean, it's something that we'd probably notify them anyways, but legally we have to already notify for the Board of Adjustments anybody's property that touches. And if that's residential, they could come speak against, and the Board of Adjustments could potentially deny it based on, you know.
I mean, it
But-
seems to me that you're kind of raising the same issue that Robin raised here, and that is that it's vague enough where, you might not be able to create a definition that fit every circumstance you come up with, and that's why we have the Board of Adjustments.
Okay, and then, but the Board of Adjustments kind of follows these guidelines. So I guess they could make the decision to deny or approve based then on the community input to those adjoining neighbors.
Well, I mean, it would be based on the evidence and testimony that they
All
hear,
of it.
you know, at that. You know, they could look at the area in general, and I think I even noted something about the justification for placing it where they are. So they could look and say, you know, this doesn't fit within the area. My only fear with the way it's worded is there's a big difference between residentially zoned property and residentially used property. So like there's industrial land down here by Singleton Lane off of 146 that's zoned industrial, but it's used residentially. And so if we're going to go to that, and if you all choose to put that in, I would prefer you all put something on whether or not that's residentially used, residentially zoned, or how you all would define that if you all choose to go that route.
Magistrate Hounds.
You took the words right out of my mouth, because you can have a residential structure on just about any zoning classification that we have. Now, would you is a whole nother story. I think that we have in place the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, that we've tasked them with making and putting or giving the ability for someone to build the facility. That's why they're in place. I think that the zoning that we're talking about now, the amendment, gives them enough parameters for them to be able to make that decision. And I would say we leave that piece out.
Magistrate Jeffries.
Yes, I would agree with Magistrate Hounds. We, as Matt Toller pointed out at our here a month or so ago, we're pretty restrictive on where these facilities will be allowed in Oldham County as it is now. And Board of Adjustments, Planning Commission, that's why those folks are there. And I think that, we should allow them some flexibility on this. If we were to pass this amendment, I think it would be a lot more restrictive and basically rule out, quite a few more areas in the county, which, as this map points out, does not leave you very many options to locate a dispensary. And so I would speak against approving this amendment.
Magistrate Tice.
I was having a thought as I was listening to Ryan. In our zoning right now, and this may be a little hard to follow me, and I'll try to say it as plainly as I can. Mm-hmm. Right now, if we have a piece of property on, say, LaGrange, that's zoned as a commercial one piece of property, and it adjoins a residential piece of property with meeting the setbacks, not meeting the use, but meeting the setbacks, as long as it's acceptable in C1. Then we can do that abutting an R2 piece of property or R3 or whatever piece of property. The one thing that was going through my mind as I was thinking about this, and I'm not sure exactly how we can do it, and I'm going to say this, and you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, Ryan, is that in a restriction, what we would do is we would place that, it's already in the restrictions that they can, for a dispensary, you can do it on a C1, C2, or 3C property. But, excuse me, I'm sorry. Have you all heard? Okay, y'all are all right. But at this point, that we would have one more caveat that would be required, is that the property adjacent to that piece of property would have to be zoned a liking or more restrictive area. So in other words, if you had a group of buildings or an area in a line, and at the end of the line it was C1, and then at the next piece of property turns into an R2, we would have a restrictive in the use of the depository that the next piece of property would have to be a C1 or 2 in addition. What that does is that takes the negative effect, in my mind, to have a dispensary which actually it abuts an R2 district to where it's becoming more into a residential. Does that make any, whether you agree with it or not, do you know what I'm trying to say? So in other words, what I'm saying is that we would capture that the dispensary had to be in a same like zoning. It couldn't be at the end of the row. It has to be within that structure. So therefore, we don't take a chance of having a piece of this dispensary abutting residential. So that's my first thought. The other thought is, and I'll ask Ryan for this, and my understanding of planning and zoning, anytime that you're on a highway, we've always assumed the property across the street was an automatic notification, as well as the people right next door. So in other words, the road there is no more than a line. It's a wider line to where the property line is. So I think that any time you look across the road, you're looking at a an adjoining property owner. If you look across the road, in terminology, it's exactly as the same as an adjoining property owner. So those people should automatically be notified, which is exactly what we do right now anyway. And I think that's a normal practice. Now, I've said a couple of things. Does anybody want to take any of that to task or talk about that? Because I've got one more, but I didn't want to mix it up with too much stuff.
Can we take care of the amendment?
Well, that's what we're doing. We're talking about it.
Well, this is exactly part of the amendment, and it's a little more of a modification. And I was surprised when Stephanie mentioned it because it was so close to what I was thinking. Mine actually went one step farther than what your amendment was. So that's part of that.
Well, we'd have to ask the motion maker if she would agree to expand her motion to include your comments.
So I think the motion does include, what I understand, Magistrate Tice, is that you're saying you would like a buffer between a dispensary and a home, right? A buffer.
It will
of the
create a buffer, meaning that it cannot be the last piece of C2 property
Right.
joining either down, considered a big box, whether it's either on the end of the line or you've abutting it in the rear to a residential or across the street from residential. So what you're doing is you're encapsulating that property in like zoning, which will be like use. So therefore, because we're a little reluctant of it, we get it in there with a residential, I mean, not residential, but a commercial piece of property never would have conflict with the residential.
Right. So you're saying it could go apartments, dry cleaner, marijuana, and then Kroger or what? Yeah, it could go. Yeah. So it wouldn't just go homes, cannabis.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was. Thank you for wording that much better than that. I was trying to include a buffer in there.
I think my way does that, and when you said it, that's what keyed me to thinking. Well, she's thinking where I am, but because I was going one step. I didn't think of yours, and apparently you didn't think of mine.
Right.
But mine gives it one more step.
So how could I word that to better include a buffer of a property other than saying that this facility could not directly abut a residential, a house?
It has to be. It can only be put on a piece of property that also abuts a commercial 1, 2, 3, or 4 piece of property, and now that's only in the dispensary. That's not in the other ones.
Right.
And I see a hand raised, and also heard our county attorney close his book
Shuffle.
behind me. So, who's ever next, Judge? And I've got one more.
Magistrate Jeffrey.
Yeah, just some confusion on my part, and I'll maybe ask Ryan as Director of Planning, what, you all put the map up there as to what would be allowed right now. If we were to pass this suggestion or whatever, or this amendment, do you have any idea how much area would be affected by that addition of that amendment?
Well, I would think that, and not having the zoning layers on here, but just going off memory, I mean, all the area down here by Hounds Lane that's industrial backs up to whatever that neighborhood is there on the Jefferson County side. I don't remember the name of it.
Willow Creek.
Okay, yeah. So that neighborhood that's directly behind it, that would take care of that. There's also Orchard Grass Hills over in there that's, and then 42, you've got this swath here on 42 that is kind of in the area like the Skylight Fire Station. There's a little bit of commercial swath in there that's actually, there's a lot of the homes that are being used residentially in that area, but there's also a lot of residentially used properties. I mean, all these areas out here, what is the name of this road? I can't.
That would be
Blakemore, out by Blakemore, and then you've got some areas down here, Miller Lane, obviously the 42 and 53 here. So I think it's really a lot of the outliers that you see there in the smaller pink areas is it's going to take them out.
right.
So.
Well, and that's my point. You know, we're the area that's going to be allowed under the original amendment to the, to our comprehensive plan, to our zoning regulations are going to be drastically reduced if we agree and to accept this amendment. So as I said earlier, I will not support that because we've got basically, there's not going to be very much of the county left that they could put a dispensary. So I would be opposed to this amendment.
Well, right. We have already taken a vote on this to allow dispensaries in this county. Now, if we go ahead and pass this ordinance full of restrictions as it is, and add more restrictions, we'll be squeezing this down to nothing. Right. So why didn't we just pass an ordinance, say we don't allow them in the county? It's counterintuitive to what we've done here.
Judge, I don't think.
Judge, you got to remember, the number one license up for grabs, that's 6 counties, right?
Well, in other words,
It'd probably
I
be-
may misunderstand these licenses. Jefferson and Fayette County are guaranteed 2, but I don't believe anybody else, any other county, they don't have to put them anywhere other than in those 2 counties to begin with. So, none of these other counties are probably going to,
And if one shows up here, it'll probably end up in LaGrange.
and one shows up here, he's got to go to the Board of Adjustments to begin with, and it's probably going to be in LaGrange. And,
Because
but
of population. Population.
population's not here. I don't know. I mean,
No,
I
population's not in the
understand
outlet
the
areas.
effort to try to control the thing, but I personally think we've got about as many controls on here as we need.
I just wanted to remind, and Ryan brought this, the latest data, 628 applicants for dispensaries, 628 in our little 7 county, 628. So the initial is those 6. The initial rollout is 6 in our region, initial. And so at all the conferences, talking to all the people involved, I asked, when is the initial period up? Well, that's going to depend on supply and demand. So
It's going to depend on the legislature, not supply and demand.
No, because it's it is the Office of Cannabis underneath Andy
I
Bashir's
don't think
office.
they can authorize any more unless the legislature.
The legislature didn't authorize this. They have the Office of Medical Cannabis, which would think of it like the Department of Education or the Library Association. It's a Department of Medical Cannabis. It's under the governor's office. They are the ones that put this together, not the legislature. So the initial rollout is 6, but there was 628 applicants. So as the supply and demand, adjusts itself, there will be more than 6. There were 628 applicants. This can change. So that office it has the privilege of modifying as we go along in this.
But you might also think too, what'd you say the money, the money for the permit, or the application was? 17 million?
20.
Yeah, 27.1, 0.7? 21.7? 27.
And they didn't put a cap on how many applications, right?
Right.
Well, I'm gonna tell you from the business world, that looks like a money grab.
The one thing,
None of that money came.
Can we vote on the motion, the amendment to the motion? I think
I think
Mr.
we
Tyson
can. All
is
right,
gonna-
let's, I agree with that.
I can
Any
retract,
further-
Judge, if it would be easier, I can retract the amendment because it sounds like it would be a 2 to 6.
All right, you want to withdraw your amendment? Okay.
It's up, you'd like to vote on the amendment? Okay, all right. Well, we can vote on the amendment.
Judge, I hate to interject.
No, you
Well,
don't.
you should not.
No, you
But
don't.
I want to interject just quickly because I'm going to be the one that's going to be dealing with what happens when we get sued. And I need some clarification. Can we get this thing?
We're going to turn off all the lights and you can
That's,
just.
yeah. And just shout real loud.
Jay! There we are. So where I'm a little confused
Okay.
is I drew this, and I'm no draftsman by any stretch of the imagination, but what was said, magistrate, is we have an R2 area, residential area right here, and we want a buffer in between the residential area and where a cannabis facility could be located, correct?
Exactly.
Well, I guess my concern is if we have a strip center that's owned by a single entity, Tice's Strip Center.
Got it.
And in Tice's
Nice.
Strip Center, we have a dry cleaner, and then we have a cannabis facility, and we have a Kroger. Does that meet the qualifications of what you're saying? Because if we have a single owner, it almost sounds like the cannabis facility would have to be located here all the way past the strip center because it can't abut a residential use. And what concerns me is then people start litigating whether or not we're abutting and, you know, the dry cleaner, what happens if the dry cleaners close? Or they, for whatever reason, they tear down the dry cleaner. Now we got a cannabis facility right up against an R2. I think if you are going to do that, I would ask that you all be very clear in your language about what abutting a residential zone means. You know, does there have to, because most of those places are not owned as individual lots. So that would be my concern, and that's all I would ask you all to consider if you're gonna go.
Before you leave, can we just, is it okay, Judge, if we have a
Okay,
conversation
but
on
I
this?
mean, honestly, my sense of this is that we're, joisted at windmills here. It's not going to pass.
Say that one more time.
This budding amendment is not going to make it. So why are we wasting time spending time on it?
Well, if I talk a few more minutes, it may make it. And if,
Well-
and since we're in disagreement, I don't want to yield to
Okay.
your will.
Okay, go ahead. Go
Right
ahead.
away. And
Go
we have
ahead.
our attorney here who's pretty good at planning and zoning.
I mean,
That's
the motion
just a
maker
fact.
was willing to withdraw her motion a moment ago.
Well, and I think she's wrong to do that because she can get me as a second. The point is, and I understand exactly what you're saying. So can that in a shopping center right out here on South 53 manage that? Can you manage that for the verbiage works? My mind was working more of just one block from what I call the magistrate's parking lot, which is at the corner of First Street and 140 Jefferson Street there. If we go into those three buildings right down from there, there is three separate buildings. And what that would do is if we had the cannabis in one of those, it would protect it. And then right next door, you've got Kinzer in the next block. And what it would do is protect from having the cannabis right next to across the street where it starts residential. That's where I was going, thinking, because we're dealing with something apparently that we want to make sure we do right and maybe not leave loopholes so we can end up having one which used to be like Tice Furniture, which was the last C1 before it was into Shears property, which was R2, for all of those of us that grew up in LaGrange and on what I'm saying. So we need to find a way to do that.
I certainly understand what your concern. I mean, I think what I worry about is the application comes in to Ryan,
Yes.
and Ryan is like, well, this is in a location that, because it's a 5-acre piece of property, even though it's on the far end away from the residential, it quote unquote abuts. I mean,
And I understand exactly your example, and you understand mine.
Yes, sir.
But can we make that work right? The other thing that really concerns me, Judge, and this was my last thought, but it goes to, I think, Oldham County planning and zoning mentality. When something goes to the Board of Adjustments and Appeals, if nobody shows up to oppose it, the boards are more liberal in their attitudes. Well, there's nobody here, so let's just give this up. My opinion when I served on planning and zoning is the same as when I serve here. As I look at all of these issues and I say, what's right for the community? And when I was on that, even if nobody shows, they elected me for that position to protect them. Not to just automatic because they had to go to work today and then I roll over. We had one just a couple of weeks ago where we didn't know how to deal with something in the Board of Adjustments Appeals. We agreed to let it happen. And Ryan will probably remember the name of it, and I don't remember the case specifically. But it was under a conditional use area to where you had specifications that it could be used, this use could be okay. But the point is if we had looked at it, there was a way to deny it. Now, I'm not saying we should have denied it, but we need to do our protection. And in closing, where I am, as much rules and what we talked about in either X-rated or whatever we're talking about, we tried to safeguard all of our schools and do all of the stuff that they're okay. We need to give this full thought. And I know for medical stuff, I'm okay with it. I don't have a personal problem. But I think at some point, we need to make sure that where we permit it, we've protected all of our citizens to the maximum we can, as well as giving them a place to do it. And I think next to residential, you just might as well open that up.
Okay,
And
well.
I'll close at that, Judge.
All right, let me respond in this way, and somebody else is certainly welcome to as well. What we have here in the, under zoning district locations, subsection 1 here, 1,000 feet is a delineated definition. Everybody can understand what the word 1,000 feet is, or what it means. I cannot understand what the word across means. Across might mean 10 things from Sunday. 1,000 feet means 1,000 feet, all right? So I think we have enough restrictions in here, but to address your concern, why don't we go to zoning district and location here? Let's amend this one paragraph here that says that it says medical cannabis facilities identified and regulated by the provisions of this section shall be allowed following zoning districts with the approval of a conditional use permit, not from the Board of Adjustments, but from the fiscal court. That'll end your problem right there. You can decide whether or not, you don't have to say the Board of Adjustments is too liberal. We'll bring it right to this body, and we'll decide if they can put it in or not.
I have no problem with that. I just wish I knew which page you were reading from
He's
before you
on
started.
Page 1 of 3.
One of three.
1 of 3.
One of 3.
Judge.
And look under number 2, Magistrate Tice.
Right.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand is we're talking about medical cannabis. And I think that we keep getting off the topic as to what we're talking about. What we're talking about, again, I'm going to say it, is medical cannabis. If and when, and to me it's a big if and a big when, and I'm not in favor of it, recreational, there's going to be a whole nother set of regulations that are going to come out. And we're going to have to go through this same operation again to tackle a different subject, which is recreational marijuana. Now, here's the thing. When I look at this, and this was brought to my attention earlier, we're being awful restrictive about medical cannabis when you can put a liquor store next to residential. And you drive down 53 right now, and there's a liquor store next to residential. You drive down 146, there's a liquor store next to residential. So why are we being so restrictive about medical cannabis that has got far more restrictions than going to purchase alcohol? Right. I don't understand.
I can answer that.
Hold on. When I read this ordinance right here, and to the judge's point, Judge, I will say one thing. When you made the comment about bringing it back to this body, we put those people on that board. You do. You make the recommendations. And not all the time, and this is not picking on you, Judge. You've said, hey, I'm looking for somebody to fill this position. And my question to you is, and you don't have to answer because it might embarrass all the magistrates, how many people respond to you and say, hey, I think you ought to put Susie Q on this board? Don't answer the question. But my point is, if we want to make a change, all of us want to make a change, then we need to put an effort in making sure that the people that we think should be on the board are put on those boards to make the decisions. That's why we have those boards. If we do what the judge says, abolish the board. Right. I think we've got something in front of us that's restrictive, that's going to work. We put faith in the system. If we're not going to put faith in the system, then change the daggone system.
Magistrate Dye.
The question about, I was thinking, I think me and you had talked about that, about the liquor store versus the medical marijuana facility. I mentioned earlier, we recently, and I don't want to use any company names, but we recently opened up a place, and a couple of places, but there's one just recently, that has a pharmacy inside of it. It's a grocery store, but it has a pharmacy inside of it. Why are we not knocking everybody down, knocking them in the head? Because that pharmacy sells opioids. And didn't we just get a bunch of money from an opioid producers because of the improper distribution, I'll say, for lack of better terms? I don't understand what all of this, the medical marijuana is not go out and get high on the weekend with a six-pack of beer. Somebody's trying to alleviate a problem that they have. I think there's 6 defined things. And I think somebody said you can only have one person in the building, the clerk and the purchaser. It's not like going to Costco and buying paper towels, right? Okay. So we're putting a lot of effort into this, and I'm a big believer in that we should do this, and we don't for whatever reason, into oversight about what we do up here. Magistrate House has come up with that, do away with the board. But the reason why everybody gets so scared about medical marijuana instead of the liquor store, because it's been driven into every generation's head since 1960, and marijuana as a gateway drug to other things. I don't particularly believe that philosophy. I think that somebody's going to do what they do because that's what they do. So I think that's the problem. Do you want a beer joint or do you want a liquor store? You want a grocery store that sells opioids at their pharmacy? That anybody can come in and get in. Then they're supposed to be doing something for you, but at the end of the day, they were turned into recreational.
All right. Well, we've got a motion on the floor to amend the ordinance. You still want to go forward with that motion, Magistrate Hawkins?
We can vote on it, yeah, and just see where the amendment goes. It probably won't pass, but we can throw it out there unless we want to make it sound a little bit
Well, and
softer.
you've heard our county attorney has raised issues about how that he thinks would possibly subject us to lawsuits because of the vulgarity of the certain points in the amendment. You still, where
Well, and I
we
think-
have 1,000 feet's 1,000 feet, but across the street or in the neighborhood or whatever is not defined in the ordinance specifically, or even in the, general parlance. What's across the street means, it means 3 different things to 3 different people,
Right. When he was talking, there was a opportunity for a few different lawsuits, it seemed, but not necessarily this one. I don't know. What do you think? We should just vote it up or down and then
Well,
move on to the ordinance
I
itself?
suggest to withdraw it myself, but you're up to, okay. Have we got, you got your,
I find it very disconcerting the fact that we're going to, well, let's vote it up and vote it down and see where it takes us. That's not what we're voted to do up here. We're voted to represent each separate section, and we have to vote our conscience. But I don't like this playing the game with it. Either these people, her and Magistrate Lawson, she made the motion, he seconded. Let them go with what they want to do, but I don't think we need to encourage them to get out of it.
okay, well, we've got a motion on the floor then.
Judge, and I hate to interrupt again, but I need a clarification here.
Okay.
So there was an original motion made to approve the ordinance, and that was seconded by Magistrate Logston. Then there was a motion made to amend the ordinance.
The motion.
Well, to add additional language to the motion to approve the ordinance, basically to amend the wording of the ordinance. Was that seconded by Magistrate Logston?
Yes.
So are you voting on the entire package, Your Honor?
No,
Or are you
no,
voting
we're
Just
just,
on the
we're just,
amendment.
we're just voting on the amendment.
Very
at
good.
this point.
It's just,
And the amendment includes, she said that she wanted to, do you want to read back what the
Yeah,
amendment?
it's-
What are we voting on here?
It's the
got to-
language that says cannabis operations shall not be permitted on any
In a
commercial
residential
property
area. Right.
contiguous with or across the street from any
Right.
residential property or mixed-use property.
And then Magistrate Tice suggested that the amendment be widened to include a buffer zone between, of at least one business between an ending point for the resident, or ending a residential and beginning of a commercial lot.
Judge, let me don't, I hate to
And
interrupt
you said you would accept that as part of your amendment.
But I think that's part of the buffer that we talked about. I think if this, adding this line is approved, then that would put in that buffer because it wouldn't go residential, cannabis, commercial, commercial, commercial. It would go residential, something else commercial, and then cannabis, and then other commercial. So I think that buffer would be implied in
that, okay. Magistrate
line.
Jeffries.
Yeah, Judge, I would respectfully disagree. I mean, I think we're muddying the water here. We've got an amendment on the floor. We've got an original motion, and we have an amendment that added the language that Magistrate Hawkins suggested. And then we had discussion, and, Magistrate Tice suggested that we, modify that or whatever. You can do that by amendment to the amendment, or you can vote this one down. He could bring then another amendment forward or whatever, but I think we're muddying the water here as to what we're
Well, she's trying to
discussing.
say that her amendment implied that, a space between the store and the residential anyway. You couldn't.
Judge Kevin's correct. You can only do one amendment at a time. That's what Kevin's trying to say.
All right.
So we should vote on the amendment,
We're going to take the vote now. Holly, please call the roll.
on the amendment.
This is in voting in favor of Magistrate Hawkins's amendment.
Magistrate Hounds,
No.
Magistrate Tice,
Yes.
Magistrate Woosley,
no.
Magistrate Logston,
Yes.
Magistrate Hawkins,
Yes.
Magistrate Dye,
No.
Magistrate Jeffries,
No.
Judge Vogel.
No. Amendment fails
6-3, 5-3.
5-3. All right. Magistrate Woosley.
Judge, I'd like to offer my own amendment, but I think this is going to be less controversial. I brought this up in the first reading. One of the restrictions still says pre-existing educational institution property. And I think that needs to be facility instead of property because the school board owns lots of property. And I think that will muddy the water at some point when somebody comes in and says, well, this is school board property, but it's not being used as a facility. So I'd like to change number 3 to say pre-existing educational institution facility.
I'll second that.
All right, moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on that?
Yes.
Magistrate Hawkins.
I think that's put in place specifically to protect future schools so that when a school is built, then they don't have to look out their door and see it. And in addition to that, we had those kids here that spoke on having to look out their door, look out their bus stop and see the lights and see the advertisements and stuff when they are at their bus stop. And I think keeping it the way it is, as it's gone through study review committee, it's gone through planning commission. Magistrate Jeffries and I were in all the study review committee discussions. It helps to just protect and keep that buffer around our schools. So I'd like to leave it as it is.
There are hundreds of acres that the school board owns that will never be a school building because it doesn't meet the requirements of KDE to allow for a school facility. One of those pieces of properties is Allen Lane. Second one is Button Lane, where there are school properties but no facilities, nor will there ever be facilities. Again, because it doesn't meet the requirement. Property was donated to the school board, but there will never be a building sitting on those properties. I don't see any reason why we couldn't change that wording from property to facilities. So that way it just clears it up and defines exactly what our buffer is here.
Anyone else on that? Holly, please call the roll. To add this amendment,
Yeah, it was Jeffries.
Yes.
No.
make this change. Changing the word property to facility. On educational institution facility.
Magistrate Dye,
Which way we vote now?
We are voting to change add an amendment to this, changing the word pre-existing educational institutional property to institution facility. So in other words, we're not talking about hundreds of acres that have nothing on them. We're only talking about buildings that already exist.
No.
Magistrate Tice.
No.
Magistrate Jeffries,
Yes.
Magistrate Woosley,
Yes.
Magistrate Hawkins,
No.
Magistrate Hounds,
Yes.
Magistrate Logston,
No.
Judge Vogel.
Yes?
4-4.
Tie, motion fails because with the tie. All right. Now we're on to the cannabis ordinance as,
Motion as amended.
motion made and seconded for the cannabis ordinance as presented. Okay, you want to call the roll on that, please?
Magistrate Hounds,
Yes.
Magistrate Logston,
No.
Magistrate Hawkins,
Yes.
Magistrate Tice,
No.
Magistrate Woosley,
Yes.
Magistrate Jeffries,
Yes.
Magistrate Dye,
Yes.
Judge Vogel.
Yes. Motion passes 6-2. All right, thank you.
You seconded the motion, then you voted no.
All right, thank you.
He seconded it, and then he voted no.
He doesn't.
I can't even.
You seconded the motion. You voted no on it.
You got a second to get a damn.
I can't even.
All right, next item on the agenda here is for contracts and resolutions. Jim Silliman, approval of Tartan's Landing Road Bank Stabilization Project.
Yes, before you is a proposed contract. I've been working with Ben Kimbler, our road superintendent, at the end of, at Tartan's Landing, the end of North Buckeye Street at the Tartan's Landing Marina. There's a stretch of road with the bank goes into the marina, and the road department deposits riprap on that regularly. It does just keep sinking into the marina. We're looking for a more permanent solution. So we met with the contractor who completed the 18 Mile Creek Road bank stabilization projects to look at this, and they've provided a cost for the work. It's about 130 feet, linear feet of bank stabilization. There was not a competitive bid process because the contractor has the state contract. They've already gone through a competitive process to get this contract with the state, and we can utilize those prices. The numbers before you, the contract is in the amount or proposed amount of $317,161.69. That's based on site observations. The actual cost would be based on the material used. In the case of the 18 Mile Creek Road, we were actually a little bit lower than the proposed. It was pretty close though. This cost does also include some I'll call supplemental engineering, because in the case of the 18 Mile Creek Road bank stabilization, we were putting these walls on bedrock in the creek, so very stable there. Here we've got a different situation with the marina on the Ohio River, very much deeper to bedrock, so we need to ensure that these walls are stable. So again, the price includes a supplemental engineering amount that the contractor will provide before construction, as well as pavement restoration. So I'm asking that fiscal court approve judge to sign this purchase authorization to have the contractor perform this work. And the intent would be to start work as soon as weather permits and that engineering is completed, and ideally be done by the end of the fiscal year.
Judge,
Yes, sir.
I'll move that we approve this or allow you to sign this for $317,161.69. And it did go through Road Committee this morning with a positive recommendation.
Second.
Any discussion on this? Magistrate Tice?
This is in my district. I was over yesterday. I talked to Jim about it on the phone. It's quite a bit of work, and I would hope that as we do it with the intention of only doing it one time, and put enough product in there that it doesn't go back into the marina, that what we put up there stays. But it does need to be, in my opinion, it does need to be done, just like it's in Jim's opinion. So.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Magistrate Woosley?
Mr. Silliman, what kind of guarantees would we have that this would even work?
Well, that's the intent of the supplemental engineering ahead of time, is to ensure, I mean, there are similar systems that have been used in marinas. We've not done it before ourselves, so I think we need this stamped set of drawings by a licensed engineer with that verification before we start the work.
Is there any wording that would say in 5 years, if this fails, they would come back and reimburse us so much money, or is that even a thing on bank stabilization?
It's typically not, and I doubt it's part of this contract, but I could verify that. And again, more assuredly, we're going to get a licensed engineer to stamp plans before the project is even done to show that it's effective.
Judge?
Yes, sir.
Just to follow up on that, Jim, is that something that with an engineer stamp is, I don't guess there's any guarantee or whatever with what, if he says it's going to work and it doesn't work, then is there anything we can fall back on with the engineering firm?
This is probably a law question, but maybe the errors and omissions clause in their insurance.
Yeah, I mean, that would be where we would be looking. These things are always a little bit difficult. I mean, we would need probably an opinion of an engineer that what they did, I mean, they're going to give an opinion that what they're going to do is going to work. And then we have to get another engineer to say, well, what they said was wrong because this is why it was wrong. I mean, and they might claim act of God or something of it, but we just have to litigate that issue.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
But the intent of the engineering is to have geotechnical results to support the design.
Right. Okay.
All right, Magistrate Dye.
There's one thing that you have to remember, that you can get the best engineering in the world. Sometimes Mother Nature will fool you.
That's correct.
So.
Well, we got a motion on the floor and a second to go ahead with the Tartan's Landing Road Bank Stabilization Project. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is the approval of the Willow Creek Sidewalk Improvement Project.
Somewhat similarly, we have a project, in this case, to improve the sidewalk deflections or humps and breaks in the sidewalk in this neighborhood. Willow Creek is a neighborhood that's split by the Oldham County, Jefferson County line. This is I'll call it a phase one in the project, similar to the work we did recently on Championship Court. The intent of this project is this company provides services to grind and cut deflections in sidewalk or vertical separations that are no more than 2 inches. And so they'll correct all those. And then once that work is done, we have a second company in coordination with our road department come in and fix the larger heaves in the sidewalk, maybe caused by roots that are outside of the realm of this, and that would be a phase two. And this is all also in coordination with our current paving package that's out for bidders to bid on in that area. So we'll be doing sidewalk and paving work. So my request is that Oldham County Fiscal Court approved Judge Executive to approve this contract in the amount of $55,237.50 to perform that first phase of sidewalk corrections.
I'll make that motion, Judge.
Okay,
Second.
Moved and seconded. We go ahead with the Willow Creek Sidewalk hazard improvement
Judge,
program?
that did go through road committee
Okay.
also with a positive recommendation.
Okay, all right. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
I have a question for you, Jim.
Yes, sir.
You know, these, you call them deflections, I call them trip hazards.
Same thing, yes, that's right.
I see a lot of that. You know, a lot of my subdivision, my areas are curbed and guttered and sidewalked. And you see a lot of this. And usually it shows up after a period of time, and it's not always from trees. Some of the older subdivisions where trees are a problem. But is there any other way to, I know, doesn't the city of Louisville, don't they have a sidewalk inspection before they pour it?
Sidewalk inspection at what time?
Or how they put it in?
During construction?
Yeah. Make sure that they, I think sometimes the problem is what guys have told me is, I said, your sidewalk's going to do better or worse depending upon the dirt underneath of it.
That's correct. It should be compacted properly.
Yeah.
And we should be observing that during construction.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, they say they also don't use a compaction on the rock either. Everybody thinks that rock's for drainage, and it's really not. He said it's usually less concrete.
Right.
Okay, I think we're pretty decent here. I mean, as far as, well, I grew up in the place where the city had a sidewalk inspector. And they come along and mark your sidewalk and knock it out and replace it and send you a bill. So you didn't have much say about it, if any, so I guess we're taking care of these people.
That's correct.
All right. Okay, thank you. We've got a couple of resignations to announce here. We're sorry to see Belinda Demas leave. Belinda left at the end of last week. Belinda's been with us for 14 or 15 years, has handled all our federal projects and planning and development, but circumstances have changed for her in her life, and so we want to wish Belinda Demas the very best and thank her for everything she did for us for the last 10 or 15, I think 14 years she's been with us, or 15. Pardon? 16. Right. Time gets away from you after a while, but she's been a valuable employee, and we thank her very much for what she's done. Also want to announce the resignation of Daniel Quire from the police department. That also is effective next week. So we thank him for working with us and wish Daniel and his family the best in the future. Now, I do have one board appointment today. I'd like to appoint Dr. Madonna Ringswald to the Oldham County EMS Board. She would be fulfilling the unexpired term of Joan Bryant, and that would go until September of 26. And I'm sure that some of you know Dr. Ringswald, a longtime Oldham County physician who is retired at this point, but is able to participate in this medical service.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. We'll wind up now with our fiscal court for the day. We think we're pretty much in record time here. Not a record, but still record time. Magistrate Logston.
I just want to thank Belinda Newmas for her work she did to the county. I mean, she's an asset that's going to be hard to replace. Not only did she did, I don't even know how. I'd love to know the amount of money that she brought into the county doing the grants and stuff she wrote. So thank you, Belinda. I didn't know you were leaving, or we could have had a party or something for her, but we didn't know that. So apologize for that. She's been here a long time.
All right, thank you. I just pointed out here that I skipped the second public comment. Was there anybody here who would like to address us at the end of the meeting before we close out here? Don't see anybody. Okay, thank you. Magistrate Dye.
Thank you, Judge. Some of the magistrates went to the Kentucky Association of Counties conference last week, and there was a gentleman presenting there from the FBI talking about how you can keep yourself out of trouble on the internet. And he talked about, if you don't know the internet, if you don't know the person sending you that email, don't open it. He realized that maybe it could be a relative, it's not too savvy on a computer, and you might make them mad, but it's a whole lot better than losing a lot of your personal information that they can trade with on the black net. He put some other email addresses up there, and I know I get a lot of calls, and sometimes they're recognized as spam. It says it right there on the screen, spam. So it's, and I don't answer. If I don't recognize the number, I don't answer. I just let it ring through. Well, the people that are making these phone calls now have come up with a better plan to get people like us, hardworking people, to get our money out of our pocket a whole lot faster. They just let the phone ring once, and they hang up. Well, you would think that if somebody's going to try to get you on the line to try to scam you, you have to pick up the phone and talk to them. Well, that's not necessarily true. They have figured out that ringing the phone once piques your interest. So if you get those one phone rings, don't call them back. That's it.
All right, thank you. Magistrate Hawkins.
I just wanted to thank the court for the support of the medical cannabis ordinance. And I'll quote our wise county attorney over there at the Planning Commission. He had let them know that if something like this, some kind of guardrails didn't pass, then it could be the wild, wild west. So I just appreciate the support. And I'd like to hear from Ms. Alvey, the percentage of voters in Oldham County who came out to vote. When she came here on the 5th, it was, I think I remember 57.8%. So I'd like to see what that ended up being. But I think Oldham County had a great supportive turnout for the election. So, and that's all I have today, Judge.
Magistrate Hounds.
Yes, thank you, Judge. As Magistrate Dodd mentioned, several of us attend the CAECO conference, and it's probably one of the better conferences that we attend throughout the year. And I believe, Magistrate Lawson, you're now the second vice president. Is that how that?
First, second.
Well, I mean, there's two second vice presidents, right? I'm first. He's the second vice president. So we have Michael look forward to be president of CAECO and continue on with showing Oldham County off to the rest of the state. We have also kicked off the Oldham County or the Fiscal Court, or whatever term we want to use, food drive. I did place some boxes, some crates in locations, and Jay McDowell was kind enough to create a video that's out on our Facebook page to talk about it, and did a nice job with that. I know that several of the departments are doing little programs to try to get people to donate, and I understand there are two of them that I need to pick up this week that are overflowing with canned goods. So thank you for that, and we'll continue that on until the month of December, and hopefully be able to help some folks have a happy Thanksgiving or maybe a Merry Christmas, because we're not going to finish it until the mid-December.
Thank you. Magistrate Jeffries.
Yes, Judge. Just a couple things. Just like to announce that the Ballardsville antenna site, which is out in my district, is now operational and tied in with the system here in Oldham County. So we should have a lot better coverage in the Centerfield area and some of the more outlying areas towards the Henry Shelby County line. So that site got up operational, I think, last week, and so they've a lot of hard work to get that done. But just wanted to announce that is up and operational. And as Magistrate Hounds pointed out, I'd like to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving coming up. And I'm getting a lot of questions about the 53 realignment. We've got KYTC has sent out the results from their meeting they had back in May, and we're probably going to have another meeting sometime in January. We'll announce it once we get everything finalized, but we're probably going to meet here in the fiscal courtroom to discuss what the longer term plans are on the Highway 53 realignment. So, Judge, that's all I have.
All right, Magistrate Woosley.
Judge, thank you. According to Ms. Alvey's website, we had 38,620 voters. I'm not sure what that percentage was, but it's up there. Earlier today, several of us magistrates and you, Judge, attended a ribbon cutting for CNS Manufacturing on Commerce Parkway. Just want to thank Ryan and Megan Steele for trusting Oldham County and bringing their huge business out here to Oldham County. And then finally, as mentioned last week, we attended the CAECO conference, and one of the sessions was put on by the Veterans Hall of Fame. They had some really nice veterans-only parking signs that I think we should look at least purchasing one or two and putting around the courthouse for veterans-only parking. So I'll send you the link, Judge, but they have really nice signs that you can put out front. So,
Where was that at, Kevin?
Thank you.
CAECO conference last week.
Oh.
All right, thank you. Good idea. Measure Tice.
Yes, now that Halloween's behind us, we're into the holiday season. That means we're going to be out. A lot of people are going to be out. It gets dark earlier, so let's be careful out there and be courteous to all the other people. So happy holidays, and let's look forward to good holidays. Thank you.
Judge,
Yes, sir.
just to follow up, I text Amy. Amy's at a conference through tomorrow. She said she'll come next court and give a full report. So.
Right, I'll follow up and say that we did have that groundbreaking for CNX machine this morning on Commerce Parkway. Looking forward to this building project. It's going to be a really nice-looking building when they get it up, and we're happy to have Ryan and Megan Steele move their business to Oldham County. It's a very high-tech business, and we really look forward to having them here and certainly welcome them. I also want to thank Michael Thompson, who's here today, who has redone our county website. I'd like to maybe, if I'd have been on the ball, I'd have thought about making a presentation here today and going through the website on our big screen. We've got a big screen and we need to use it, and maybe we'll be able to do that here in the future, maybe next time or sometime here. It looks very nice, and Robin did make a suggestion, I don't know, maybe you heard that, about getting, we have had our minutes and agenda on for the last 2 years on the prior website, so we should get them on this website as well. That was a good idea, and we certainly didn't leave it out by intentionally, but there's a lot of facts that go into putting a website together. I mean, literally thousands of facts, and Michael did a really nice job of putting it all together and laying it out so it's easy to follow.
Can I ask a question? Since we're on the website, why can't we put all the minutes we have up on there? Is it constraint? Is there not enough room, or?
Data entry. It's data entry.
Well, they just scan them.
I don't know. We'd have to look at that.
Sounds like a job for our first vice
I understand what you're
president.
saying, but there might.
I think our first vice president of CAECO ought to do that.
Yeah.
Data entry.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that'd be.
Anybody's got that title, it can do
Yeah,
just
right.
about anything.
Yeah.
Well, we'll put out anything that's on Keiko's website. We'll put on our website. So, right. Okay.
There you go, Judge.
I got you. All right. Thank you for being here today, and we appreciate the people who view our program on TV. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.